You know you're excited about something when you have it open and you start using it within 20 minutes of it arriving to your door. What am I talking about? It's these retro brights. So Bibi Cameron's had a release, and these are intense liquid colours. When she reached out to me to see if I'd be interested in trying them, I couldn't wait to accept because I've never used liquid watercolours that were artist level. So I was really intrigued to see what they'd be like. And I'll talk a little bit more about them later, but I did want to share the other things that they sent first. I have also got the sparkle base. Now there's 4 different colours in this, and they're really sparkly liquids, and like there's silver, gold, bronze and copper, so you've got all bases covered there. There's a couple of extra bottles here, so you can actually mix your own colours with the sparkle if there's something that you know that you're going to use a lot of. I was really lucky because they sent me a couple of sets of stamps as well, and they included the stackable blocks. Now these aren't new to me, so basically each block can be set up with the stamps and the stamps can be left and stored on the blocks themselves. So this is actually a lettering set, and it's called ABBCs. Get it? It's an awesome name. And it has over 90 stamps in it, so lots of different letters, which I really appreciate because it makes it easier when you are stamping out words or sentiments. You don't have to kind of allow for gaps. The second set is called Happy Mail, and it has lots of Happy Mail. It's actually perfect if you're a small business owner. So this set is called the Retro Brights, and there are 8 colours, and they actually are sealed. So you need to unscrew the bottle, remove the seal, and then you can take the lid off. It screws the opposite way. So they are, is it watertight? Is that the word that you use? They're not going to spill. It's easier to say that. I do recommend any new watercolours swatching them out because you really can't tell from the colours themselves when they're sitting on a palette exactly what they're going to look like. So because these are liquid watercolours, they are ready to go. But the good thing is that you can change them up, which is one of the reasons why I chose this specific set. It has the 3 primaries in it. So there's red, yellow and blue. And if you know anything about a colour wheel, then you know that you're going to be able to create most colours just having those 3 at hand. All right, so I read the instructions wrong. I thought that I had to draw and colour my own images. Freehand. So today you get a couple of different freehand ideas to draw, but you can stamp something and colour if you find that easy to do. And I thought these colours look good enough to eat, so that's what got me thinking. I'm always thinking about food, so today I thought I'd draw a couple of cakes, starting with a cupcake. Really simple design. I just sketched out the actual cupcake and then the icing, and I'm going to have a big cherry on the top. I'm using a pencil here, and I'm using it quite lightly. Because these colours are transparent, the paint will not cover those lines up. So I do use an eraser to erase them away a little bit. Having a colour wheel is going to save you time and headaches. It has a mixing guide on one side, and you can literally just spin the top panel around till you see the colour that you want to make. I want to make a brown, so I know that I need the red, violet and the yellow, and that's going to give me a light brown. So then I looked at my swatched colours, and I could just grab a bit of each of those colours. So I had like the red violet, which was the purple tone, and I've mixed it with the yellow. If you're not confident in mixing colours, then I recommend that you keep a swatch of scrap cardstock off to the side so that you can test your colours as you're mixing them. You can always add a little bit more. I tend to start small and kind of get a feel for the depth of the colour. If it needs to be darker, then I'll add more of the purple. If it needs to be lighter, then I'll add more of the yellow. These colours are already a liquid, but you can add water as well. Because they're a water base, the clean water will just dilute the colour and make it look a little bit lighter. They do not have to be as bright as I swatched them. In fact, this red, it's a really sweet cherry red. It's really bright. So by diluting it down with water, I could get a really pale pink colour, which is almost unheard of when you look at how bright it is in the swatch. You might also notice that I'm colouring in different areas. I'm allowing a section to dry before I paint next to it. Because these are watercolours, even though the paper might not feel particularly wet, it does take a little bit of drying time. And what will tend to happen is the watercolours will seep into each other. They kind of wick. So if I painted directly next to a wet area, like say I put the green next to the light brown when it was wet, it's going to absorb and the colours are going to mix and not look pretty. So one thing to be aware of is to work in areas that are adjacent to each other. There is a lot of drying time when it comes to watercolours. Another option is to use a heat tool, and you'll see that I use that throughout the painting here today as well. And if you have the option, use it on the low heat setting. One other thing that I'd recommend is a little bit of pre-planning, especially for your white highlight areas. So you might notice that on the cupcake wrapper here, I've got some white stripes beginning to show. So I am adding some depth slowly. I'm waiting for the sections to dry before I come back and add a darker colour, working back and forth in different areas. If you're struggling with the white highlights, then just paint the whole thing pink and then come in with some darker versions of the pink and maybe some purple tones to add the depth in that way. Then at the end, you can always add some highlights with a white gel pen if you think it really needs it. You might find that it doesn't. There's always a point when you're colouring with watercolours that you look at it and go like, no, this is going in the bin. But stop, don't throw it away. Step away, let it dry, come back. I promise it won't look so bad. And it's all learning anyway. So even if it's not something that you love, then it's going to be something that you've enjoyed and learned from creating. I think it's all the little details that really help take an image to the next level, and I like to add some fine sort of lines, depth and dimension using a fine watercolor brush. You can actually use a larger brush and get a very similar look. You don't have to have a whole different array of brushes, but if you've got a fine one, it might just help get into those really tight areas and help put less watercolor down if you're wanting just to get a sharp edge on something. Another option is to come in with a pencil and add details at the end with a pencil of a similar color or something that's a shade darker. But even a larger brush, you can, if you've got a fairly steady hand, get a nice fine line. Use whatever you have. So when I'm grounding an image, like adding a shadow, giving it somewhere to live on the card, what I like to do is paint a virtual line. It will be just above the base of the image itself. So don't draw your virtual line where the image hits, the bottom of the image hits the card, because you're going to lose that sense of depth. So add that just behind the actual image itself. Just a few millimeters up will be enough, and that's going to help with your sense of depth. I added some of that shimmer directly to the icing, just straight out of the bottle. I used the silver and it looks stunning. Really hard to see in the photos, I'm sorry. but it's there. I could have mixed it with the green that I coloured the icing in, but I wanted it to be more of a highlight rather than throughout the whole paint. But that's a great option. I have tried that since, and it works beautifully, mixing those shimmery colours with the paints. All right, so a quick tip here. If you have warped your cardstock at all and you want it to flatten out, you can run it through your die cutting machine. Just add a shim, some copy paper to protect the cardstock, and run it through, and you'll find you can run it through a couple of times if you need to, and you'll find that that will flatten the image out really quickly and easily. I decided to use one of the sentiments from the Happy Mail because even though it's a mailing set, it has some really cute sentiments in it as well, and I love the font in this word hey. Now I did use the stackable blocks because why not? I've got everything, stamp positioning tools and everything available. I thought I'd give them a go because they're fun. And so I did crack out the Stamp-A-Majig, but I didn't line it up very well. So I'm really glad that I did use it because I could re-stamp the sentiment. And I love stamping in black ink because you can always come in with a marker and fix up any mistakes. So I've added this to the front of a card, and I've also added some sprinkles because it's those little details that can really take a simple design like a one layer card and make it that much more interesting, like adding shimmer, adding sprinkles, and adding depth and dimension with grounding the image. Okay, so next it's time to talk cake, and this one's got 3 layers. I do want to mention about cardstock here. We are paper crafters, so we have it all. Shout yourself your best cardstock when you're watercoloring. It makes a difference. You are worth it. So whatever cardstock you're hoarding and not using because it's your good stuff, you're going to get your best results on that cardstock. There's a reason it costs you more money. It's because it plays nicer with the watercolors. You're going to get better results, less warping. And if it doesn't work out, you haven't wasted it. You've learned something. You've had fun. Don't stress. So if you've got the good stuff, use it. You may have also noticed that I'm working from a well of colors. So this is actually the next day, and this is the original palette that I used. I like to mix my colors on a palette. This is a plastic rectangle. You can use whatever you have. You can even use a plate. I would recommend using a white plate though, so you can actually see the colors. But these colors have dried overnight, but they are easy to react again just by adding some more water, so you don't have to waste colors. Don't feel like once you've poured it out of the bottle it's no good, you can't use it anymore. Obviously if you're wanting to use it as a liquid and you want the original color, that's the best way to use it. But if you're mixing your own like I am here, mixing it onto a palette, then I can keep using the colors that I've already mixed. One of the good things about allowing the colors to dry meant that they are more intense, like because it's dried onto the palette. If I'm using the fine brush here, I can get some really great details with these intense colors. So it kind of gives you more colors from the original colors. So it's going to be a lot more intense, more bright, and you can add some details really easily using that. So if you're not happy with an area, you can lift these colors. I wanted to test that here. Wasn't that I made a mistake, no, wink. But adding some water, clean water to the area and dabbing it with a piece of paper towel will actually lift this color, and that worked well on these watercolors. These are the colours of the rainbow, but there are 2 other sets that Bibi's released, and I was really interested. There's one that's called a Tuscany brown, and they're more earthy colours. I think they'd be amazing. I always love those earthy tones, but it's the brights that I keep coming back to and use more often. So over the years, I've worked out what colours are best for me and what's going to work with the rest of my stash. And I've got a top tip here. When you're mixing colours on a palette, make more than you think you're going to need, because you're never going to get that exact same colour again. So I did a similar kind of grounding look for this cake as well, using colours that were left over on the palette, although I didn't think they were quite dark enough. So I decided to make a darker grey. I just looked at my colour swatch, added some blue and some orange together until I was happy with the result, and then created my visual line to ground the cake and added it as a larger shadow than I normally would. And I have a confession. I struggle to know when to stop, so I just keep going. And sometimes I just tell myself, stop and walk away. I'm getting better at it, but sometimes I just keep overworking it. But that's okay. I was having fun painting. And I did add some sparkly details to the icing on this cake as well. I thought I'd use the ABBCs and the stackable box again. This one comes, if you get the stackable box, it has 6 there. So if you're clever, you can set up your most used sentiments on these blocks ready to go. Because if you're anything like me, lettering stamp sets just feel like hard work sometimes to get them lined up perfectly. You know, like sometimes it's just easier to get a sentiment that's all ready to go. So if you've got certain words that you use all the time, then you can have 6 set up ready to go. Love it. It's a great idea. And I decided to make my sentiment into a cake topper today, because every cake needs a topper. And popping it up adds a nice detail to the card. My verdict? These liquid intense colours were such fun to create with. I literally opened them and started colouring immediately. They were easy to use, especially if you're going to colour a stamped image and not draw your own. And there is so much colour in one bottle. Mixing them was really easy, and I love the fact that I could come back the next day and use the dried colour and reactivate it, so there's no waste. Congratulations on an amazing release, Bibi, and I am thrilled that you invited me along to be a part of it. Till next time, happy paper crafting. Bye.